I'm Greg Jarrett for FoxNews.com. The videotape of a Jordanian pilot being burned alive in a cage by the terror group ISIS, causing outrage around the world, including in the Middle East. Will this brutal murder backfire on ISIS? Joining us for regional perspective is Ambassador Feisal Amin Rasul al-Istrabadi, who is a former Iraqi diplomat now with the Center for the Study of the Middle East. Ambassador, welcome. Does this videotape execution, as horrific as it is, remove any doubt that the Islamic State ISIS is savage and barbaric and must be defeated?
Not that many of us had those doubts, but yes, I think it does. And if you'll pardon me, I don't use the word execution. This was a murder. A state executes a prisoner after it has tried him and given him due process of law. This was a murder. This was the killing of a prisoner. It was murder in the most heinous and brutal manner that no religion, no civilized order, no one can tolerate. ISIL is a threat to those of us in the region. It's a threat to a decent and civilized order in the Middle East,
right.
And indeed throughout the world. They must be defeated through an effort that the world's community cooperates in.
Well, and your point is well taken, execution versus murder. There does appear to be revulsion and outrage throughout the Arab and Muslim world. A leading Sunni imam calling for the Islamic terrorists to suffer the same fate as their victims. They are not of Islam. Is that a message that is actually going to resonate in that region of the world?
I think it will. This message comes from the most important academic and legal center in the Sunni world, the Al-Azhar University in Cairo. I think that will resonate. I should point out, this is not the first time that ISIL has done this. ISIL has burned at least 2 Iraqi soldiers to death in Iraq during their expansion over the summer. It is heinous and repugnant, and I think that all the Arab world, the Islamic world, and indeed the civilized world will be united in their revulsion and repugnancy over this.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the goal of ISIS in doing this. Is it simply to terrorize without regard to consequences or backlash? Are they hoping to intimidate or demoralize the U.S. and Arab coalition? What is their goal?
I think in particular they thought that by doing this in such a heinous and such a public way, although I myself refuse to watch the tape, but nonetheless I know those who have, and I've seen it described. But by doing this in such a heinous way, I think they were hoping that the public reaction would be against the Jordanian government for its participation in the coalition against them. I think it's going to have exactly the opposite effect. I think people will now, those who are on the fence or those who might have said, well, it's Iraq's fight or Syria's fight, but not our fight,
right,
now realize this is everyone's fight. The entire civilized world must come together. It appears
to be happening already in Jordan. Jordanians taking to the street. And these are people who some of whom may have been somewhat sympathetic to ISIS. They now appear to be quite angry and repulsed. They cheered the executions, for example, by Jordan this morning of the 2 ISIS terrorists. Jordan, in the meantime, is vowing massive retaliation. So my question to you is, will they, and what would that look like?
I understand that on the will they, I think the answer is yes. I was reading news reports this morning that came out of the King of Jordan's meeting. You know, when this happened, the King of Jordan, as you know, was in the United States.
Right.
And he met with members of I think it was the House Armed Services Committee right after the news of this came out. And the descriptions of those meetings were that he was furious and was clearly bent on exacting a retribution, a righteous retribution, I have to say, for these acts. So I think, on the other hand, it has to be a coordinated response. And the king is a military man. He was an army general. He will know that he will need to coordinate a response with his coalition partners, which of course includes obviously the United States and some of the NATO allies, as well as Iraq and other regional powers. So I think there will be a coordinated response. But I think that at some point the international community has to look at this and really take seriously the notion that this is not some low level. This is not going to require some low level response.
Well,
there needs to be a massive response to roll them back.
You know, it was a year and a half ago. President Obama, May 23rd, 2013, said the war on terror is over. Is the rise of the Islamic State, in your judgment, a direct result of President Obama's strategy, pulling out of Iraq without a status of forces agreement, and doing very little in Syria?
I do think it was a mistake to let Syria fester, and now we're in a point in Syria. Syria is a huge problem. I saw reports that the British foreign minister is saying that, foreign secretary is saying that it'll take 2 years to get ISIL out of Iraq. If that's true, it will take years to get them out of Syria. It's a huge problem.
Right.
And yes, I do think the United States made a strategic mistake.
Will it require boots on the ground and not just bombing?
Well, at least arming. I mean, we really, in the United States, we really have never we should have armed in 2011 and 12. We should have armed the rebels, particularly the Free Syrian Army, it seems to me, when they were a more viable force than they have become, when they would have been an alternative to the radicals who constitute ISIL now. In Iraq, I also agree the United States should have kept a force there. It also, I think, took its eye off the ball for too long as Maliki, the prime minister at the time, really started to undo the political bargains that the Americans had forged. And that created an environment in Iraq that allowed ISIL to have a sympathetic environment. So, yes, I think there were mistakes made by all concerned, by the Iraqis, by the Americans, and frankly by regional powers in the Gulf and Saudi Arabia and elsewhere who looked the other way, who thought that ISIL and groups like them, Al-Qaeda and others, didn't constitute a threat to them as long as they were just killing people, doing suicide bombings in Iraq or other places. Well, they're a threat to everybody, and they're a threat to everyone in the civilized order, and none of us can build a wall high enough to keep them out. They have to be confronted and defeated.
Well, it was a tragic miscalculation if, as you suggest, those mistakes were made. Ambassador al-Istrabadi, thank you very much. And for the latest on the fight against ISIS, stick with FoxNews.com. I'm Greg Jarrett. Thank you for watching.